All right, Matt, we're on to week 3 of our podcast together, and you're in Marin County, San Francisco Bay Area. What's one more thing that you have on the schedule to check off while you're here?
So we've been to Muir Woods.
Oh, nice.
Is that how you pronounce that? Muir
Woods, yeah.
Been to Muir Woods, which was incredible.
Did you pay the entry fee and go into like the proper, or you just went?
Yeah, we went right in.
Oh, wow.
Full experience. Full immersion. Yeah, had to. Even filmed some content in there, which was pretty fun.
Nice.
We did Alcatraz. Those two were both on my bucket list for like the last 10 years. So that was awesome.
Fantastic.
And today after this, we're going to go out to Hayden Ashbury.
Oh, nice.
Check things out there.
Yeah.
We also went to did the whole Fisherman's Wharf thing.
Yep.
So yeah, it's been like a big trip so far.
Yeah,
We've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you're hitting some great bucket list or highlights of the Bay. If you need more recommendations, feel free to ask.
Not sure if I can fit more in.
Yeah, when you guys leaving on Saturday?
Saturday,
yeah. Well, there's always room for Tony's Pizza while you're in there. So if you like pizza,
where's that? Is that Marin?
That's in San Francisco. So you could hit that up tonight. Would be a good spot to go. Best pizza probably one of the best pizza spots in San Francisco, and Tony's. So
we're hoping we actually have one more thing as well on Friday, tomorrow night. We're hoping to do In-N-Out. The entire team, nobody's done In-N-Out.
Oh,
and we want to do In-N-Out and go and eat it on a beach somewhere. I don't know.
Oh, beautiful. It's easy done.
Yeah.
Honestly, go to the In-N-Out in Mill Valley, which is where I grew up, and it was like our high school, it was like the high school spot where we would go.
Okay.
And then you're like a short drive to Fort Cronkite Beach.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, I mean, short-ish drive, but yeah, you could get out there before it gets cold.
Yeah, I have no idea what to expect with In-N-Out. I've heard some good things. I don't even know what's so special about it. It looks like a burger shack, but
yeah, well,
I'm gonna get the classic burgers.
Some
fries,
people
and
are blown away, and some people are like, it's just a burger.
Yeah, right.
Either way, it's definitely a California treat. All right, well, we've covered lots in the last 2 episodes together, but this topic is really, I think, the one that, in my experience, it takes an athlete, which is a lot of people you work with. It takes an athlete to come to you, to like somebody who has specific goals and is really driven by their performance, to recognize proactively, hey, if I improve my mobility, I'm going to be better at this thing. So people will approach it certainly from a performance standpoint, but I do think a lot of people that we encounter think about mobility once they are in pain. They're like, damn, this thing hurts. And I hear that if I have better mobility, I'm not going to hurt as much. So this is going to be kind of like our pain episode.
Cool.
And how comfortable do you feel talking about pain? Let's just start there.
Very comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what's in my wheelhouse, and I know what I'm not professionally equipped to deal with, and I stay within my lane. And I think I'm very comfortable with it because I think in many cases it's far more simple than most people realize it is.
Oh.
And that approaching it can be much easier than what they have been led to believe. But we don't deal with acute injuries and stuff like that. We're dealing with things that are ongoing pain that have been plaguing them for a decent amount of time. And if there's been no clear injury to the area, then we'll be happy to jump in and support them. But if they clearly need support from a physical therapist, then we're not going to be those people that help in that aspect.
How do you draw that line? Where's that? I mean, obviously it comes from years and years of experience and working with a lot of people, but
Yeah, I think there's certain types of pain that we steer clear from. So if there's anything nervy, there's just too much room for error there. And considering we're online supporting people, we don't want to have a misstep or a miscommunication that causes somebody more discomfort and more pain. So in that case, we're just going to refer out.
Okay.
So if there's clearly nerve pain or acute injuries, as I said, like somebody just dislocated their shoulder or tore something, we're not going to support it. Like that's not within our wheelhouse. Like we're not going to mobility you within that short period of time and repair a torn meniscus or something, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So I think if you've been struggling with pain or there's discomfort that has turned into pain, that's kind of where we step up and we have some great success with.
Yeah. I would also imagine that the people that have had acute injuries or even nerve pain, that they get referred to a physical therapist. There's a point at which, okay, the physical therapy is done. The nerve pain has subsided. The dislocated shoulder is back to, the boxes checked on the PT with the physical therapist. That's a person that would probably benefit greatly from,
right.
Now we got to get into a structured, like you're not clear, like you're just clear to start doing the work.
Right. They've been cleared by the PT. Right. Then we feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
Right. So we just want to make sure we're not going to take someone on and then harm them more.
Of course.
So there's like kind of we got to make sure that some boxes are checked and, in order to do that. Yeah.
I just wanted to touch on that because I know that there's a mentality that is a bit pervasive out there. And I think it's harmful in that people believe, oh, once I got the checkbox, cleared to start, or cleared by the PT, then they're like, I'm good. And I can just go back to doing all the things that I was doing before that maybe led me down this path of acute injury.
Like what got you here to begin with, right? Because I think most PTs, they're often guided to get the person back to where they were and never better. Right? Or rarely better, I should say, because never is a strong word.
Yeah.
But I think that just gets people back to where they were. And then once they're there, they're still just as liable to the same injuries and the same issues. And I don't know this for a fact. I think one of the PTs on my team, so we have physical therapists that work for us as well. We don't offer physical therapy services, but we have physical therapists that are coaches for us that work for us. They were saying something like 80% of people who have been cleared from a PT will end up with the same injury or same pain points at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, and I'm not bringing this up to say, hey, there's the PT or the physical therapy paradigm is broken or anything like that. It's like this, it serves a purpose, just like when you go and get surgery or you go and get something, it's like it served a purpose. But now I think the harm or my concern is that people view that as like I've arrived at my I'm set, where we want to build a bigger continuum of like pain to resilience and to true like optimal performance and strength.
Yeah. And that's our entire goal. And for what it's worth, like I'm pro physical therapy. Like I want people to, if they need it, go get it. Like we're not those people for you. But I also like our entire thing is building resiliency. Yeah. Like we want to expose you to the things that are weak, have you put in work there, and then ultimately have them no longer be a liability for you. Yeah. Like those positions that we're causing that are not prepared to withstand the stress, those are the positions that are going to cause you injury at some point if you overstress them, right? Like that's just what an injury is.
Yeah. So then let's go back to that other group that is your wheelhouse, this kind of chronic pain, something, there was no acute injury, but this thing is developed, through probably repeated bad exposures or weak joints or, you could probably expand on that more, but you said pain is simpler than most people make it out to be. How give us the simplification. Well, I want to know how it's simpler.
Yeah. I feel like I should back up because pain is very complex, honestly. Yes. Like it's insanely complex and we don't really understand it to begin with. Like it's multifactorial. There's so many different things that could be causing it. So pain isn't necessarily simple, but approaching it can be.
Okay.
So when it comes to the way we do things is that we'll look at a particular pain point and we'll look at the particular pattern or position that exposes that pain point and triggers it and makes it worse. So an example I was telling you the other day is the knee pain in the deep squat. If somebody's feeling pain throughout their squat pattern, we look at what could be causing that, right? So now we have to look at the squat as a trigger, a potential trigger to the issue. So then we need to look at what's happening to the knee within the squat pattern. So we have, if we break it down into the various different biomechanics, we have ankle dorsiflexion, we have knee flexion, we have hip internal rotation and flexion, we have the position of the pelvis. Like all these things need to kind of be considered within the pattern of a squat. And then the rotation of the hip and the ankle dorsiflexion all have an influence over how the knee is performing within the squat. So if we improve how the ankle functions and we improve how the hip functions, we reduce the amount of unnecessary stress that is being placed at the knee, that is being placed there beyond what it is ready to adapt to within a reasonable amount of time, right? So if we kind of improve the function of those areas, then we'll be able to have an influence over how the knee feels throughout that squat pattern. So oftentimes when we do an assessment, like a mobility assessment, we'll see that sure, the knee is sore within the squat pattern, but the knee isn't actually showing any limitations within the movement pattern or how it's functioning, but we're seeing a huge discrepancy between the ankle dorsiflexion and how the hip is functioning within the squat. So it's like, okay, so let's try and restore the balance of how that kind of cohesive relationship is. And from there, it's like just following the kinetic chain, you know, like what area causes stress to where just by following the pattern or following the kinetic chain, so to speak.
So the simplicity that you're talking about comes from this deep understanding that like where you experience the pain is rarely
the symptom. Where you experience the symptom is rarely the cause.
Yes.
Right.
Or the thing that you need to fix. It's
right.
This upstream, downstream approach. So the knee is bothered, downstream is ankle stuff, upstream is hip and pelvis stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I know the way I described it may have seemed complex, but to simplify it, it's like look up and down the chain. What's the nearest big joint and how is that performing? Even if you don't know how that's performing, if you're just like, I have no idea what I'm doing, I just know that I have knee pain and the nearest big joints that are responsible for the movements that I'm doing are my ankles and my hips, let's focus on those with mobility, you're likely to start to see some benefit to the knee from that.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about like yesterday, the idea, and you know, maybe Ben Patrick has really made this most known, or not known, but his attention to this and the way he's talked about it, the concept that like, hey, if something hurts, like there's one model that says don't do the thing that hurts, steer clear of it. And then there's kind of his introduction to the model, which is like, oh, deep squatting hurts, then like we got to move towards deep squatting as a solution to making you able to squat deeply and have all that. Where do you sit in that kind of conversation, and how does that impact, you know, the way that you're approaching helping people that are in this kind of chronic pain world?
I think as we've said a few times though, I think that exposing those pain points, there's benefit there, but we have to kind of do so in a way that is approachable for the nervous system not to kind of protect even more, right? So we often, like our golden rule within our coaching is never approach pain, because it can have a reverse effect from what we're trying to achieve. The nervous system protects you from perceived risks, perceived threats, right? And if we're trying to influence the nervous system in a way that allows us to gain access to these ranges of motion that's going to help reduce the stress to the area that's causing symptoms, then we need to find a way to make sure that we're not triggering the nervous system to continue to protect, right? So pain, although it can be used as a metric and it can be used as something that just kind of guides our approach, it's not something we want to continuously push into. Now, there's some research that states that being introduced to pain, certain pain levels, is good for a rehab approach. Again, we're not a rehab-based company. We're focused on just moving better and reducing the discomfort and symptoms that you're feeling.
I want to segue into, I think, what is one of, like, you know, the I was going to say the biggest, you know, maybe messages or approaches that you take. But it's the word big is in the name. So I just did that. Talk to us about the Primal Big 3.
Yeah.
What is that?
So you look at powerlifting and you have the big 3 movements, right? So you got squat, bench, deadlift. And those in the powerlifting world, like, that's all you need to build like extreme power and strength within your full body. And when I was approaching early on in my career in this, like in the mobility world, that when I was approaching mobility as a whole, it's like when I'm looking at how can I build a program for the general masses without being very specific to the individual, I was looking for ways to address the body or certain areas to address that is going to have the biggest influence on how the rest of the body moves. So we call it the Primal Big 3 just to kind of give it a fun name so people can remember what it is.
Yeah.
But really all it is the ankles, the hips, and the thoracic spine. Regardless of what you're struggling with, if you're going to address those 3 areas, everything's going to improve. If you address your ankles and hips, your knee function is going to improve. If you address your hips and your thoracic, your lumbar spine is going to improve, right? So the common areas that traditionally present symptoms of discomfort, if we focus on the Primal Big 3 up and down the chain from that area of the symptom, we're going to see some progress to that symptom of discomfort.
Yeah. That's so, so
simplifying it, you know?
Yeah. Connecting this to the conversation of pain, it's like, you know, without having the ability to get in for an individual evaluation, like, hey, let's figure out your specific joint limitations. You know, somebody's experiencing pain. Hey, let's go back to these big 3. Like, what are you doing to address ankle range of motion, hip range of motion, and thoracic spine? And it's funny. It's like, you know, in the course of anyone's CrossFit competitive career, you develop pain. There's just no way around it.
Of course,
like you get banged up, and there's certain positions and things that start to bother you. And I was going through my own pain phases, and I was having a lot of knee pain. I was having shoulder pain. And I went to a local mobility WOD, Kelly Starrett and his team. And
the Ready State now.
What's that? Ready State, the Ready State now. They're local, by the way. They like live real close. Anyway, I got my own mobility protocol that I started to implement. It just became my daily like practice around, like pre-training. And it was basically like a heavy D ball on my thighs in a deep squat to work on my ankle mobility with like some band distraction on it. Okay. So I was like doing daily work on my ankles. The second thing I did was like a can opener on a T-spine can opener. So I was really starting to address my thoracic spine.
Yep.
And then I was doing like pretty, a focused hip extension, mobility piece. So I had like 3 things that I did every day, and I was like astounded. Yeah, I was astounded. I was like, I had an ankle, I had a hip, I had a thoracic spine thing. That was it, and it wildly improved everything that I was doing, like all my pain, but also my movement quality. And I'm just like remembering that now as you're talking about this, like I'm doing the Primal Big 3
exactly
with intention. And with enough exposure and consistency, I probably lacked progressive overload. I had reached a point where I wasn't making them even, I was pushing my progressions.
Right.
But even just that had a massive impact on my experience.
Yeah, sometimes the most simple things can just have the most astounding results, right? And that's a huge thing as to what we do within our programs now, because we have those generalized programs that people like mass of people follow, and we really focus on addressing those as our main areas. It's rare that you're going to see elbow specific stuff or wrist specific stuff. We're really focused on addressing those main areas, and you start to see once you improve your thoracic spine, and of course we have the shoulders as well, like we address that because very important. But once you start to improve the thoracic spine, the scapular function starts to improve, then the shoulder function starts to improve, and then elbows stop hurting as much. And then in your front rack position, the wrists don't feel as restricted or tension in the wrist. But yeah, like if you focus on those three main areas, it has a huge influence on how the rest of the body moves. So when I was saying that, improving the thoracic spine, you have to have a good functioning thoracic spine for your ribs to track or to move effectively. And then you need that in order for your scapula to move function appropriately. And then if your scapula isn't moving well, then your shoulders won't be moving well. So along that kind of like maze, that web of things, most people will start to feel shoulder discomfort. When really, if you go back to the root, it could absolutely be that the thoracic spine is really restricted and not allowing for the scapula to move well. Right? So especially for those that are sitting at a desk for prolonged periods of time, and I use that example because they just sit in thoracic flexion for such a long period of time that the ribs can't move effectively and the thoracic can't move effectively, so and the scapula doesn't, and so then the shoulder doesn't.
Yeah. I want to try and get at something that I think is really like hard for people to connect with, which is most people don't have an understanding of like, oh, my shoulder hurts, so I got to track things all the way back to my thoracic spine.
Which is why we try to simplify as much as possible.
Yeah, right, of course. But let's say they can like appreciate that, you know, or like, hey, I'm having low back pain. All right, well, let's address some of your hip function. Maybe we get that sorted out. Your low back pain will kind of resolve, or you won't perceive it as much. And then maybe it's like knees, like, okay, my knee is hurting. It's like, well, what's going on with your ankles? And look at that. So if they're going to practice this downstream, upstream, big three approach, what is like, how do you get somebody to commit to it long enough? Or what do you say, like, hey, if you do this, like, I know you can't give total general recommendations right now because it never works, but, you know, hey, your shoulder's bothering you, like, let's spend 2 weeks, or, you know, when should somebody feel a difference if they go back to the thoracic spine, they actually perform a can opener every day for, you know, a week? Like, hey, you should notice some downstream benefit within X period of time.
Yeah. So as you said, it's impossible to answer a question like that in a general way, but it, like, if I were to go like specific situations, but if I were to go general, the results generally come very quickly, and people are traditionally like quite surprised by how fast the results come. But the thing is, like, we got to make sure that there's actually some foundational changes that are being made, and not just like, oh, the symptom's gone. We're good here.
Yeah.
Right. So that's like, we don't have contracts in what we do. Come with us, try us out, see how it feels, and then let our work kind of speak for us. But we tell everyone that we speak with, like, you should be mentally committing to 12 weeks, 3 months. That's enough time for us to actually go through the protocol, apply enough progressive overload, and then from there, build up to a point where we're actually starting to make some foundational, like, in some cases, structural changes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like those initial wins that people go through where they're like, oh, my shoulder doesn't hurt as much. That's more of like, oh, that's a sign that we found something that's worth really investing in for a period of time. Because you just got out of pain. That doesn't mean you're ready. It's gone. It just means that you you impacted it a little bit. We got to put in more work.
Right. Like, and just to go back, because I know we've been talking about like a few of the different principles that we have at Primal Mobility. So one of them is to follow a logical anatomical order. And so when we're presented with a symptom, we need to kind of take some step backs. We have like a list of things that we have seen that have been proven to help support certain things, right? Like just understanding the biomechanics, and we were just talking about the thoracic for the shoulders, but that doesn't mean that approach is going to be effective, right? So a lot of times up front, it's a bit of trial and error, and we're really just waiting to see how your body responds, and then we jump in and kind of make the tweaks as needed. So over time, it starts to, like, the program just gets more and more and more effective, because we're learning how your body responds to certain things and what it needs through that process. But yeah, like, as I was saying, I think that 4 weeks is like a good kind of time frame to like have a very minimum expectation to really dive into something and I have to be careful with how I say that, because right, generally,
yes,
speaking,
generally, he's not saying everybody.
Come on. 4 weeks, like, it's very, very common that within the first week we see people like, what's happening? And that's because we're just doing things that make sense, and they've just have never been exposed to it in that way.
Like they're saying, like, what's happening? Like, this is good. Like, I'm seeing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like the results.
Like,
it's
what are you're working miracles.
Yeah, and it's always like, there's nothing special about this.
Yeah.
This is the most, like, if from my brain, like, again, I've been obsessing over this stuff for 8 years straight. So from my brain, it seems like completely logical and just the most obvious thing ever. But that's kind of my goal, is like, I want to share how I see it, because it is very logical the way we're approaching it. There's nothing special about it. It's just we're taking traditional strength protocols, strength principles, and applying it in a biomechanics capacity in a way that's very beneficial to the movement patterns that they're exposed to in the gym. Yeah.
Well, Matt, you embody a lot of the things that I really respect, a deep passion and for a specific subject and topic, but then wanting to be as relatable to everybody and simplify things as much as possible, because our passionate brains can get way into the weeds, and that doesn't always help people to go to that level. So these last conversations that we've had have certainly been, when I learn things from other people, it excites me, and it also, I have a ton of respect for them to be able to break down complex topics for myself and for the audience. So I really appreciate everything that you brought, and we get to spend another day together tomorrow training, which I'm excited about. And I hope this is just the beginning of a long relationship. So thank you for contributing so much already.
It's an honor to be here, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yep.
Good
awesome.
chats.
Yeah, excellent. Before we go, Matt, tell the audience how they can either get in touch with you, learn more from you, or if they resonated a lot and they want to become one of your clients, where can they go?
So you could start by checking us out on our website, so www.primalmobility.com. You can check out our end range program there. That is like the most introductory program that we're going to have, and you'll be getting some incredible results there for a good rate, very cheap and introductory, so that'll be helpful. If you have questions and want to interact with me personally, you can just jump over to my Instagram, primal.mobility. So at primal.mobility, and toss me a DM there, and I'm very responsive and love interacting and answering any questions and guiding people in the right direction. So
awesome. You guys should definitely go give them a follow. I know most of you listeners are on Instagram. Lots of good information there, and check their website out. And again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.